Hey guys, welcome back. This is Bradekus of Bradekus Gaming coming to you today with a advanced tactics guide, and today we're going to be discussing defense. Defense, listed right here, is a number that indicates the mitigation of incoming damage. That's the real core of the number. There are tons and tons of things that are going to affect your defense. Now, I'm going to go over the big effects to defense, and then we're going to dive in. I did a bunch of math for this video. I wanted to show you guys the in-depth look at defense and all the different variables that apply to these numbers. So one of the things is you have a base defense, okay, which can change depending on multiple different variables. And then you have this little blue bonus defense. I don't know why this is all not just one number, because it really can be. I mean, they're all over the place with it, but this should be just one number. It doesn't really matter, but it should be. Now that I know all the math, it's a majority of the math that goes into this number, it really should just be one number that changes based off multiple factors. I think it would have been easier to figure everything out if they had done that. But let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to look at Yuan Shao. Now, there's one thing that I want to go over right off the bat is that named characters, big named characters, Yuan Shao, Liu Bei, Guan Yu, Tao Tao, they are going to get a larger benefit from the variables than non-big named characters. So there are some definite things that do affect those guys more than the non-named characters. We'll go over that later, but that is one huge thing that is going to apply to defense is your main named characters. They get the greatest benefits from stuff. I've seen it in defense. I'm sure that is throughout all of the different statistics is the big name characters get the biggest increases. The next thing to go over here is formation. So, multiple different formations have multiple different defenses. It changes the base and the bonus defense. I'm not sure exact math on that of all the different formations, but I can tell you that ring formation has the highest amount of defense, and then it is descending from there with fish, crane, arrow, goose. Okay, and it goes down and lower with siege weapons and stuff like that. So as it should. That's really the important factor with the formations is that you have a ring, which is a high defense. It's going to have higher defense. So I think we all understand that. Another thing, of course, is traits. There are traits that increase defense. They're going to have a large impact on these defense numbers. I didn't calculate all of them out because I just did not have enough time to do it. But there are definitely traits and tactics that are going to affect defense. There's going to be some that are better than others, but they are going to increase these numbers. So having them trigger and marching the right guys out and stuff like that is going to work. It's going to increase that defense and keep your guys alive better. So another thing that's going to have a great impact on defense is troops. So your troop count, as your troop count increases, the higher the defense is going to go. So you go from 1,000. I'm going to go ahead and switch Yuan Shao here to 1,000. As you can see, his defense is at 517 and 124. You go up to max amount. He's now at 619 and 226. So the amount of troops you're marching out are going to greatly increase your defense number. You're going to mitigate more and more and more of that damage. There's another thing here that is confidants. So there is a very large increase of having confidants within range of your character. That is going to have significant improvements on morale per confidant you have around you. I believe spouses also have that increase. I didn't dive into it, but I'm pretty sure it's there. Most of the time I don't march spouses and, women in general in the game because they typically have low strength and they die really easy. So, that's another factor in the whole entire defense. But confidants definitely have a huge impact, specifically with certain characters. Your big name characters are going to have the largest amount of impact from their confidants. Now, I tried to figure out how strength or leadership, charisma, or politics, or any of these numbers applied to this defense number, but I really wasn't able to figure it out. I looked for patterns and checked out tons of different characters and really dove really deep into it, and I just could not find a pattern of these numbers having a direct impact on this number. I'm sure it's there, and I believe that it's due to leadership. I'm pretty confident that it does have an impact on it, but I cannot say for certain because I could not find a pattern or any direct number that, this number directly increased this defense number. I just could not find it. So I really don't know the relationship. I believe leadership does have an impact, but like I said, I'm not for sure. If anybody does have found that information, please share it. I would love to know what it is or what the math is. So another thing here that has a direct impact on defense, which is interesting because if you go into your help menu, go into battle, and go under morale, okay, it does not say here that you have an increase of defense due to morale, okay? The higher the morale, the more attack power they have against enemy units. Well, what it doesn't tell you is that the more morale you have, there is an increase on your defense. Okay, so that is an important thing that is left out here. And I did not realize that until I started adding everything up and looking at everything. So there is a direct impact from morale on defense. Now, another thing that is going to have a direct impact on your defense is how many areas you have conquered when your units marched out into an area. Okay. So I did a lot of my testings here at Yi. Okay. For instance, I tested over here in Handan, okay, to see the area of impact that is affecting your troops and their defense. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So I'm just going to go ahead and march out Yuan Shao here. Just 1,000 troops. And as you guys all know, and we have all known since the beginning of this game, is that when you have a troop march out in the field, okay, when they're in the field, they're going to get an impact from the areas around them. Those are the beams of light that are coming in, okay? We all know that, but it has a direct impact on your amount of defense. So that's why I'm even discussing it. But we all know that increases attack power and everything else. But there is a significant impact that does happen when you move from an area like here where you get 4 that are incoming, okay, to like here right next to Yi where you have 5 incoming, okay. Basically, having another area pumping that benefit into you is like having a fort in that area. So moving from an area right here into here, okay, is a large increase in defense. And it is important to understand that as you play the game. It's something I don't really pay attention to all that much, but and I really don't care all that much, but it does have a significant impact. And it will impact where you build your forts and your camps and stuff like that. So if you built a fort over here, okay, that's going to have a greater impact than building one over here. So you're going to gain an additional area of benefit and you'll have a fort. So that's really one of the important parts of this whole entire conversation. So, I mean, I wouldn't look too deeply into it. Don't sit and do math and figure out, just go with the game. But that does have an impact on the game. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into all the math I did, and I'm going to break this all down for you guys. Well, not everything. I'm gonna generalize a lot of this because it's really not that important. But this is how I came to the conclusion of how all the different variables come together and make that number. I wanted to really know the in-depth information. How is this number created? So I went ahead and I went through and I started calculating a whole bunch of numbers. I went through and I checked all these different characters, moved them around the map and marched them all around, built forts and camps and chested all these different guys and these different formations. And I wanted to see what the difference were. So let's go over that now. So as you can see here at the bottom, I went over the formations. As you can see, there's a significant difference between like fish and arrow. With the amount of defense. You go over here to the right and you can kind of see the same thing with like snake and arrow. This amount of defense is significantly lower when you're in arrow formation than versus being in a fish formation. And same thing with goose. Goose is really, really low. Doesn't have any defense at all. So and then I went ahead and I checked out what is the amount of defense you gain from a camp in a fort. So after testing everything, it was really completely unnecessary to go as far as I did, but I went ahead and did it because I was bored. And you gain 10%, 9.97. There's variables in this, like these little red indicators here. This outlines that there's some kind of anomaly or a variable or something I can't account for, but 10% increase in defense when you're in range of a camp. And there is a 25% increase in defense when you're in range of a fort. Going over here, this is how I figured out, everything that's going on with morale in defense because there's just no information on it in game. So there's a few interesting points to go over here. I went ahead and tested multiple different levels of morale. I just marched a character into a forest and, created as much of the most scientific way I could do it. There are definitely some discrepancies here, but I marched a character in forest, let the morale drop, looked at their defense, calculated it all out, figured it out. So what I did find, which is really, 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 really important, is your defense gets valued, what it's valued at as you gain higher and higher morale. So how many points of defense do you gain from going up a point in morale? And what I found is there's a significant diminishing return the higher your morale goes. So you gain less from defense as your morale goes up. And there's just that base diminishing return. This is over here on the right-hand side. Here's a visual indication of the value of defense per point of morale as it goes up. As you can see, the value does a nice, gentle decline going from higher defense, or higher value of defense down to a lower value of defense as your numbers go up. That's just or average. I probably should name that something else, but it's fine. So here are a few discrepancies I found. I don't know if it is my math or if it's their math. I'm pretty sure it's their math because I'm pretty damn good at math. But there's a few discrepancies in that. They're teeny tiny discrepancies. You're talking about hundredths of a point. It's teeny tiny discrepancies. So and then here I went ahead and I calculated out the percent of change, okay, of value as your morale goes down. So as your morale drops, okay, the value of points of defense actually goes up. So it's the opposite of diminishing return. It's a falling return, I guess you would call it. It's just complete opposite way. So as you can see here, as your morale drops, the value of your defense gets higher, which is really nice because what that creates is you don't have any kind of power spikes or deep pits in the change of morale to defense. So over here is just that visual indication, no big deal. Next, this is the 5 area bonus versus 4 area bonus. I wanted to see, when I went from an area where I was getting, 4 of those beams of light coming in, those bonuses from the areas around me, into a 5 point area where, I had 5 areas that were giving me bonuses. I wanted to see what the percent changes. And this is where I really started to see the difference between like Yuan Shao and Shen Pai. So right here, you can see that your named characters, your big name characters, like Yuan Shang, because he is a leader later on in the game, and Yuan Shao is, at the start of the game, and these guys are they're famous, but they're, low Bs compared to Yuan Shao. They don't gain as much of a benefit from going into an area with more bonus coming in. So it was really interesting to me. And just doing some browsing and stuff through other campaigns, I found it was pretty much that's universal, as the biggest name characters gain the biggest bonuses from areas and everything else overall. So your big name characters are just that much more important. So this next section here we're going to go over is confidants. So confidants have a massive impact on defense, and it's something I need to start looking at more in the game, because there is huge numbers here, huge percentage of numbers, and all this stuff stacks together to make it ultimately a high number. But what was really interesting here is you can see here on the amount of defense growth from their base defense, and this is all about the blue number there, right, of the defense number, that increases 100% when you have one confidant next to you for big name characters. It's only 50% for low name characters, but you have a big name character, you get 2 of his confidants next to him, or 1 of his confidants next to him, you're going to have an under 100% increase in the bonus defense. 2 confidants is going to be a 200%, just lower, I'm just rounding up. And then same thing with 3 confidants, it goes up almost 300% to that base bonus number. And that could stack with something like a fort, so on and so forth. So that is and these are the numbers right here I was just discussing. That is a huge increase. Now, there's some guys that only have 2 confidants, and there's also another little interesting thing I'll go over right here. But guys with 2 confidants, of course, they're capped. They can only go up to about 200% increase from their base. And then the non-big name characters, you can see, are about half of that. Now, what else is very interesting here is that I had Shen Pai, and I brought 2 of his confidants together, and there was no increase in the amount of defense. It was the exact same. So I think there's some characters in the game that can only benefit from 2 confidants, not 3, even though they have 3 listed. And I wasn't able to really duplicate. I didn't dive that deep. I didn't check out any other characters, because it would have just taken massive amounts of time to find another one. But as you can see here, that he did not get an increase, and that is one of those anomalies that I do not know why for sure, but maybe some of these guys just cannot benefit from more than 2 confidants. And let's go ahead and go down a little further here. This is all about troop amounts. So here's a graph. I'm going to skip all the math. We don't need to really go over to it. What's really important about what's up here is I went from 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, so on and so forth, up to 1,500, then 2,000 troops, then 5,000 troops, then 10,000 troops. And I wanted to see what was the percentage, or the average percentage of increase based off of your troop counts. So here's another real interesting thing, is that your named characters get a bigger bonus, significantly bigger bonus. You're talking 10% higher than your non-big named characters. So that was, very interesting to me. So I went ahead and just did averages of all that increase. Okay. And this is not, on the head accurate, because there's some great variances there, but I think that this gives you a good indication of what exactly is going on. And what's really also important is that this spike here that goes up is because I'm jumping from 1,500 troops to 2,000 to 5,000 to 10,000. This would be a more gradual decline if I had more data points to show you guys, but I'm not going to spend all that time going getting 100 guys, you know. So as you can see here is that when you go from, you know, 1,000 troops up to 1,100 troops, there's a small increase in your defense. It's 0.34. That gradually slopes up. And then, of course, like I said, this would be more gradual if I didn't do the jumps. But you can see here, this is when you get to 2,000, you know, 5,000, 10,000. So when you get up to like 10,000 troops, you have a average 21% increase in your defense. So the larger amounts of troops you can march, the more sturdy they're going to be. And that is what's really important. So all that math aside, you know, what's really important here ultimately, okay, is the higher the number, the more damage is mitigated. And that's all that really anybody should really be concerned with, is that, you know, I want high numbers on my defense. I want to mitigate more damage. And how to do that, you know, just large amounts of troops, make sure your morale's high, okay? Try to march them out. You know, running around with low morale is no big deal. It's not the end of the game. You don't have to make sure your morale's perfect, but having higher morale increases defense. You know, being within range of a fort is higher defense. Forts are valued higher than camps. If you have an opportunity to build fort over a camp, absolutely do so, even though they do take longer and they cost more. You're going to have plenty of money in the game, no big deal. March your named characters out. They're going to have large impacts. If you want to dive that deep into looking at areas and counting them out and stuff like that to make sure you're getting extra defense from your areas, that's great. You know, conquer areas as you go in. I make that mistake all the time. Somebody made a comment on it. But you know, it's try to conquer areas as you go in. You're going to have a harder time when you're not conquering areas when you're moving into an area and stuff like that. So try to conquer areas as you go. And I think that really goes, you know, over just about everything that I could find with defense. You know, there's shield wall, there's all sorts of little defensive tactics that are going to increase your defense and make a difference. I didn't calculate all those out, but we all know what they do. So, but also another thing is that here in the administration, you know, your domestics, is it domestics or is it support? Morale limits for cities and units is highly valued. The higher the morale, the more defense you're going to have, the more attack power you're going to have. So increasing your morale limits is great. It's one of the most beneficial stats in the game. You know, it affects just a broad range of things. So, and I think that's really that sums it up about defense. It's there. I wouldn't dwell on it. You know, the game's about fun, okay, not calculation. You don't need to sit and try to calculate the perfect. I'm never going to lose a unit to fight. You're going to lose guys. You're going to have guys die. You're going to make mistakes, and it is okay. This game is just a video game, and it's fun. I dove into it because I was bored, and I wanted to put a video out to get views. So, but that's it. That's all I could figure out about defense. There's some stuff in there I could never figure out. I could never figure out the relationship with strength. As far as I can tell, there is no relationship with strength. I think that there is a relationship with leadership and defense, but I could not figure out the math for it, and I couldn't prove it, but I'm pretty sure it's there. So having, throwing out those leadership tomes on your character, I believe, is going to increase your defense. I would have to sit down and find the tomes and toss them on the guys. I'm not going to do all that. But I think this is a good guide just to go over defense. You have a greater understanding of it, and we'll call it that. So go ahead, like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and let me know what you think. Take it easy.